Since her mother's death? Yes. It's upstairs now somewhere. I think it has never been unwrapped. Unwrapped? You mean it was tied up when it came? Lou, I've got to have that album, and I've got to have it soon. It'll be back here at 12 o'clock, and don't open the door until you've turned on the porch light and seen who it is. Is that a promise? I agreed, and to my stunned amazement he bent down and kissed me lightly on the lips. That's for being a good girl, he said, and a moment later he had disappeared down the street. It was not until he had gone that I remembered that I had not asked about the poison ivy. Chapter 37. The neighbors were leaving the Lancaster house now. I could hear their low decorous voices and the subdued sound of their feet on the steps of the porch, and it was almost a shock to hear that even Mrs. Talbot had ceased to boom. At the street pavement they separated into two groups, the Talbots turning right, the others coming toward me, Jim, the Daltons and Mother. The men in their dark clothes, the women in black, as they approached their faces looked like four disembodied and slightly swaying white balloons, and this illusion was increased by the fact that they were not talking at all. As they came closer I saw that Jim was slightly ahead, and that with his hands thrust deep into his pockets he was apparently lost in thought. At the foot of our walk he stopped and faced them, like a man who has made a decision of some sort. "Look here," he said. "I suppose there's no use expecting an honest answer, but isn't there a chance that he is mixed up in this somehow?" "Nobody has heard of him for years," Brian Dalton said. "In any case, since you've brought the matter up, why the Lancasters?" "He was fond of Emily, even if he hated the old lady. He had plenty of reason to detest her, I gather." "What's the use of all this secrecy anyhow?" Jim demanded. "I didn't know it myself until a day or two ago. I dug it out of the Talbots, Lizzie, if you want to know, and George Talbot doesn't know it yet." "If that isn't like this Crescent, I don't know what is." "I've kept quiet on George's account, but I'm damned if I care to go on. That story's got to be told. If he was crazy then he's crazy now." "He was just about as crazy as I am," Brian Dalton said shortly. "Would you know him if you saw him? Any of you?" Jim persisted. They were all certain that they would, but Jim himself, it appeared, had never seen this unnamed individual at all, at least not since he was a small child. He was impatient and irritable, as I could tell by his voice. He may be right here among us, he insisted. He may be your Joseph, Dalton. Or he may be this new butler of ours. He's a queer egg. If he's a butler, then I'm a housemaid. Joseph has been with us for years, Brian Dalton said stiffly. And John Talbot's been missing for years too. Jim persisted. I sat up suddenly in my chair. So it was John Talbot they were talking about, the man of the crayon portrait in the stable loft, and of whom Lydia only that very morning had said that he was the gentlest soul alive. And at one time he had been considered a lunatic, but not by everybody. Mother was speaking, in her clear high-bred voice. You are being absurd, Jim, she said. For years all of us have tried to keep that unfortunate story from George. Do you want George to learn it? Or the police? The police. My God, why shouldn't they know? It's their business to know. What sort of a conspiracy of silence is this, anyhow? If John Talbot liked Emily, how do you know she didn't let him into the house last Thursday? She might have thought he was sane, and then he got out of hand, and then later on he killed her too. Are you going to ignore a thing like that to conceal an old scandal or whatever it was? Listen, Jim, Laura Dalton said. If any one of us really thought John Talbot capable of such a thing, we would tell it. We simply don't, that's all. That other was a crime of passion.